With Star Wars being a hit in the arcades, a sequel of course would be made, but it's lesser known than its predecessor, and it came out in 1985 as a conversion kit for the original arcade game, which is 2 years after the last Star Wars movie in the original trilogy was released in theaters. Now, with its namesake often said to be the best Star Wars movie of all time, as well as one of the best movie sequels ever made, making a licensed game based off the Battle of Hoth and the Falcon escape scenes seems like the best approach to appeal to fans of the movie. Hello everyone, Alec Alger the SideQuest Gamer here, and I do have to ask if this lesser known arcade game is better than the original 1983 Star Wars game. Despite having a somewhat innovative vector line 3D graphics, and was developed and published by Atari, Empire Strikes Back didn't seem to do as well commercially, partially in part due to maybe how there wasn't any Star Wars movies to get hyped for in 1985, and no, the Ewoks Battle for Endor TV movie does not count nor will ever count. It also might be because it was sold as a conversion kit to the original Star Wars arcade game, and some people just wouldn't be willing to upgrade an already popular game with something potentially not as good, especially if they were still profiting from it. And if you've played the original Star Wars arcade, not much is new here, with a few exceptions. If you wait a while, you get a text scroll bringing up those who've never seen the movies up to speed on what's happening. Suffice to say, the Empire is striking back because they sent probe droids, I mean probots, in search of the Rebel base because they feared Luke Skywalker's strength in the Force. While it is a very basic synopsis of the intro, it does cover everything that is needed, but the story presentation goes beyond the text scroll this time because in the beginning we see a Star Destroyer fly, and the voice clips that play during the action provide more context to the Rebel point of view, like how the probots were thought to be meteorites, but are discovered delivering transmissions to the Empire, which leads to them landing on Hoth in round 2, and now you have to protect the shield generator for as long as you can, to round 3 and 4 being in the perspective of Han Solo, Chewbacca, and C-3PO as they escape the Empire's assault on Hoth, with even C-3PO expressing his concern for the odds of surviving the asteroid belts. We even have it end with the Falcon escaping and Darth Vader expressing how Luke could potentially destroy the Empire. This game, like the movie, does capture that sense of consequence. This isn't like last time where the hero beat the villains against all odds. Now the heroes lost the battle and are escaping just to survive and live to fight another day. There isn't any victory in this. In fact, it's a crippling defeat, but the journey to fight another day is still satisfying enough of an experience as much as saving the day in the last game. Of course, most would be in it for the high score given this is an arcade game, but for what it's worth, the story, despite it being just the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, it does wrap up quite nicely before looping again. But past the story scroll, we of course are given tutorial information on how to play the game, how many points can be scored by taking out X enemy, and what rewards are there for performing tricks. That fun stuff basically, and the game takes it a step further by giving you an instructions difficulty mode, basically telling you what to do in between waves in case you're new to the experience. Design choices like these in 1985 just make the argument about how games don't need tutorials obsolete. Because we didn't have them back then, we just had instructions manual or we figured it out for ourselves. You know, that kind of argument you hear from condescending gaming grandpas that are in the minority of the retro gaming community, but they do show up constantly and are more vocal than others. Take something like The Legend of Zelda for the NES. It can be confusing unless you read the manual, while an arcade game like this is fully capable of informing the player how to play it, and there's honestly no shame in it due to being optional. I know the NES and this arcade machine are two very different pieces of hardware, but the fact a 1985 arcade game can do this successfully while games that came out later failed to do so, unless you had the manual that would likely get lost or not be there if you're renting it, that just makes the game more timeless, while certain games that came out later are just products of their time, and only that. A video game, regardless of what year it came out, should be fully capable of giving you everything you need in the game and nothing else is needed. But I'm done ranting for now. The fact I even have to argue for optional tutorials may have been a bit overzealous on my part because there's only a few condescending gaming grandpas in the world compared to the vast majority who are like, hey, you play arcade games? Cool, I like arcade games. You know, So I'll just give Empire Strikes Back points for accessibility and move on to the level design. And compared to the predecessor, the stages are quite similar and quite different. There are 4 stages in the game, with the first 2 being on Snowspeeder playing as Luke Skywalker, and the last 2 being on the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo taking protagonistic control from here on. Now, mechanically speaking, flying on the Snowspeeder and Falcon is similar to the X-Wing with a few situational exceptions. The HP system is still in place and you can still shoot your cannons, but the way the stages are structured are more 3-dimensional. Like Stage 1 for example, where you have to take out the probe droids, it no longer feels on rails because I can turn around and turn left and right and just take out the probe droids that pass me by. But these missions are time-based, whereas it seems like taking out enemies buys you time, as opposed to the point A to point B on rails structure that the original had. And that's very apparent in Stage 2 where the Empire attacks the Rebel base's shield generator. Everything feels so real despite the vector lines thanks to this pseudo 3D space the game has provided me. I feel like I am actually launching tow cables at AT-ATs and taking them down. Although, I always found it kind of funny how the tow cables are just thrown out of the Snowspeeder like a ninja is throwing them like...
Fatality.
And taking out the giant walker seems to buy more time before the eventual destruction of the shield generator happens, and now we need to escape. This stage is probably the highlight of the game, kind of like the movie, because of the epic feeling of just taking down these literal colossal threats. Like you can do anything even though they have the upper hand. Like I especially get so much joy gaining points just for flying through the walker's legs. Like how cool is that? This is what made me think, yeah, this game is better than the original Star Wars. Fight me! But just because that's my favorite stage doesn't mean the rest of the game pales in comparison, although they do feel more on rails than before. Like Stage 3 has you fight against a bunch of TIE fighters, which is still pretty fun, don't get me wrong, even if the previous game did this already. And Stage 4 has you either avoid asteroids or destroy them, which already has my heart pounding since sometimes this is the point where I just get a game over. But because I'm the side quest gamer, I managed to do this multiple times, sometimes without fail.
Objection!
Alec, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field, that's approximately 3,120 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Fatality.
Now, despite talking about all the fun stages and what they have to offer, that's not all this game is about, because there are mission objectives introduced. They can be failed and a minor consequence will be the result. You can do a little side quest involving the Jedi letters, such as taking out a number of probe droids, taking out a number of AT-ATs, taking out a number of TIE fighters, and survive the asteroids. Each letter is awarded in their respective stages, and when all the letters are collected, the next stage would temporarily destroy all enemy projectiles and a Jedi tag shows up next to your name on the scoreboard, proving to your friends that you actually completed that little side quest, and that's one heck of a bragging right since some of these objectives can be a bit tricky. And while it's not the best reward of all time, for an arcade game about shooting things to score points and get the highest score and continue on until you die, it's still a nice enough intrinsic reward just seeing the Jedi tag on the scoreboard. So me personally, I would rank this side quest as worth it. Beyond the improvements in level structure, I do like the vector line graphics more, and it has a better selection of music that I personally prefer, like the Imperial March music playing in stages 2 and 3, as well as the frantic asteroid theme all in chiptune format, and the music honestly stands out more to me than its predecessors. But beyond the side quests, the vector lines, and the ominous Imperial March music, this game is much more challenging than its predecessor, and it just feels more satisfying as a game because of that. It expands upon the original game in creative ways that I believe longtime Star Wars fans would appreciate, and because of everything this game has to offer, it comes as no surprise that the conclusion is that yes, I do think it improves upon the original in every single way. It may not have the wow factor that the original game had, but wow factor was more of a sign of innovation than actual quality. So overall, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back is a great game that you should play before you die. If the original game wasn't fun enough already, Empire Strikes Back has simply become one of my favorite arcade games of all time. It's immersive, it's challenging, it has worthwhile side quests, its level design has nothing for me to complain about, it rewards me for doing tricks, and it's based off the best scenes in one of my favorite movies. And I'm hard pressed to find anything to complain about. And while it's a shame that there was never a Vector Line Return of the Jedi arcade game made to follow this one up, the Star Wars Vector Line duology for the arcades are games that should be played today, because don't let the vector lines and the compressed audio clips fool you. These games are not products of their time, they're products of all time. But there was a Return of the Jedi arcade game, which actually came out before Empire Strikes Back did, being released in 1984. And it's nothing like the Vector Line games, and just looking at it makes that fact very apparent. Come on, you don't want me to review it now, do you? We could just move on to the summer project. I mean, it'll take a while, but... oh, fine. One more Star Wars game and then we're moving on. But as always, thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.